Yeah, my name is Jasmine Kaldata Francis Vietnam, and since 1965 I become a voter, and I always place my X next to the cup. And what they are doing today, I can't take it. So I have no more vote to give to PPP anymore. I'm not going to vote anymore no more. If they have to lose by one vote, they're losing it by data. I have none.
Basement level vibes with another one, straight up blackness. Aye, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, I do it for the love, him not do it for no money. Straight up, him attack, educating everybody. Big up my friends and big up my family. Turn on the radio, catch the vibes, it's integrity. Straight up, Benskop stands for unity. One people, one nation, one destiny. Free up the truth in
Sanko licky love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Sanko licky love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Sanko kissy love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Sanko kissy love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, police come. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, police come. Sanko chase the love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Sanko chase the love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Sanko catchy love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Sanko catchy love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, police come. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, policeman come. Sanko squeeze the love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Sanko squeeze the love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Sanko let me love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Sanko let me love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, police come. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, policeman come. Sanko, you better run. Sanko, holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, police come. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, policeman come. Sanko chase the love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Sanko chase the love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Police come and the gala holla murder. Sanko squeezy love up on the dam and the gal a
So,
holla
this is Attorney
murder.
Shellen
Sanko squeezy
Washington,
love up on the
owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
All right, good evening. It's just 5 minutes after 9 o'clock. We're now starting up and we're getting ready to rock and roll right here on Straight Up 107.1 FM. Good evening to all of you all across Guyana. We thank you so much for entertaining us in your homes, your cars, wherever you are at this point in time. Not to forget the beautiful folks out in the Caribbean as well, those Guyanese in Trinidad and Tobago, those in Barbados. Hello to those folks in Nelson Street. And other parts of the Caribbean, you have Antigua, you have St. Lucia, we have folks in Grenada, all over Jamaica, and even in Haiti, we say "Sac passe, comment allez-vous?" And all of you, whether you're in the United States, you're in Canada, you're in the UK, it's morning time in the UK. Good morning to you folks. Some folks, wherever you are, good evening to all of you. Welcome to Straight Up. My name is Mark Benchap, and with me this evening is the leader of the People's National Congress Reform, the main political party, one of the major, because we have two, and the PNCR is the main political opposition. The main political opposition. Mr. Aubrey Norton is the leader of that party. They just celebrated their 66th, I believe, anniversary yesterday. We will ask the leader to comment about that. He's also the leader of the opposition, the parliamentary opposition. Right, lots of questions indeed. We will be taking some questions in the audience. And later down in the program, we probably, if our operator can get in touch with Mr. Wayne Caesar to join us as well. And he can squeeze in one or two quick questions to the leader of the opposition. Good evening to all of you. I know you guys are expecting this to be fireworks, but I tell you guys this, we are going to be very objective. We're going to be respectful in the audience and so forth and so on with our guests, as we ask that you do with all of the guests, all of our guests right here on 107.1 FM. Let's get straight into business and welcome the leader of the opposition, Mr. Aubrey Norton. Good evening and welcome again to Straight Up.
Having me, and a good evening to your listening and viewing audience. It's always a pleasure to be program moderated by the now famous Mark Benchap.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aubrey Norton. You make me feel like I want to go take this tie off because you're all set. You're all set for that Friday night. Usually Friday night we say, thank God it's Friday, but let's move straight on to business. What's the situation on the ground in Guyana? Lots and lots of blackouts, Mr. Aubrey Norton. Hours upon hours upon hours of blackout. I'm asking this question because some folks text me already to say, Mark, we already have blackout. What's the situation, sir?
Well, if you follow today's press conference, you would recognize that we entitled the press conference Crisis in Guyana. It's not only in the electricity sector or the power sector you're seeing problems. Across the country, there is a general crisis. In terms of electricity, the government inherited a proper plan from us. In fact, the former chairman of GPL, Mr. Raul Lucas, pointed out that there were programs in place to put 221.7 megawatts of power into the system. The People's Progressive Party did not continue the implementation of that program. And so what has happened is that you are having a demand of like 180 megawatts, and the system is not prepared to deliver on that. And as a consequence, you are having blackouts. Those who visited Guyana and those in Guyana will know between 2015 and 2020, we did a good job of reducing considerably blackouts. We constantly improved the supply of power to the grid. We got involved in reducing the loss reduction, among other things. And so the grid was well on its way to deliver to the people of Guyana the kind of service they needed. Unfortunately, the People's Progressive Party did not focus on the plan that was left in place by the APNU-AFC, led by Minister Patterson at the time, who was Minister of Public Infrastructure. They seem to be focusing all kinds of nonsense about Patterson, when in fact they should be focusing on the plans that were left there to ensure that at present we would have had the power generation to ensure that we didn't have blackouts. Unfortunately, they didn't do that, and blackouts have become the order of the day. Additionally, you will recall when they came to power, they removed the gentleman we brought, I think, from Jamaica, and put back another gentleman that was close to the PPP but was known for his incompetence. And so I thought, as a logical sequence of the actions they took, almost automatically you were guaranteed blackouts. And so we are there. But like I said, the crisis is not limited to GPL. You also have a crisis in the health sector. People who visit the hospitals will tell you that there are very few nurses, and that those that are trained to assist nurses are the ones carrying the system. And so your health sector is in problem. They cannot get drugs. We also understand that there is a lot of corruption that is linked to the drugs, in the sense that the drugs will go to the health centers, etc., but they are taken out by persons close to the PPP, placed into private pharmacies, etc. And so the people are deprived of the drugs that we are paying millions of dollars for. And so you have that crisis in the health sector: shortage of doctors, shortage of drugs, shortage of nurses, and the general mismanagement of the health sector across the country. So you have the crisis there. Then you have the crisis in education, where the government is presiding over a failed education program. Only today I mentioned the fact that while this government is talking about climate change, and they are supposed to understand that with this climate change, there will be an increase in the heat in the country, they continue to build schools without proper ventilation. They continue to operate in a way as if there isn't a climate change problem. And so we just saw them opening a school in East Rheinveld that has little or no ventilation. We saw them open the St. Gabriel School. The same is the situation there. We have said that one of the things we will do as government is to ensure that we redesign the schools to take into consideration the increase in heat, among other things. So the government, while talking about climate change, because they lack a vision, because they lack a proper plan, they tend not to do the things to ensure that they're catering to attenuate the ill effects of climate change. So you have a crisis there. You also have a crisis in regional development, where the government is seeking to control and dominate every NDC. And one of the few things that are coming out of the PPP controlled and dominated NDCs is corruption. high levels of corruption, and people are forced to resign. They are attempting to dominate every aspect of local government. So the people who are elected are not being allowed to govern. So there is a general crisis in the society. We can also move in the direction of discrimination, where clearly the government is not interested in serving all Guyanese. One, Guyana seems to mean that we will run a program in which one set of people benefit. The PPP elite, their friends, their families, and their favorites. And so the Guyanese society is not experiencing the kind of goods and services they should have in an economy that is considered the fastest growing in the world. There is a general crisis in Ghana. It is our intention to deal with the crisis in infrastructure development, the crisis in water. Ghana is a crisis-prone society. That is a summary.
Crisis-prone society, indeed. Lots and lots of crisis. The list can go on and on and on. And there might be a question percolating in the minds of folks out there with all of these crises, one upon every single day we're hearing about them. Somebody might be asking, so what is the opposition doing? What is the opposition leader doing? Before we get to that response from you, Mr. Aubrey Norton, check out this other crisis, please. That the sugar industry crisis, billions upon billions of dollars being pumped into that industry and nothing out of it at all. Touch on that, please, sir. And what can people expect, or talk a little bit about what you guys have been doing to confront these crisis upon crisis upon crisis?
Like I said, the first task of the opposition is to expose. We have been doing that. The Shadow Minister for Agriculture, Vince Roy Jordan, who I think you should invite to your program, has been pointing out that the government has placed $30-something billion in sugar, but they are not producing 20% of what they should produce. There is a glaring case of incompetence in the sugar industry. You would recall that we had downsized to ensure that we bring it to viability. The government returned to power, invested large sums without a proper plan for the sugar industry. We're hearing about all the problems in the factories, etc. And so the government is in no position to ensure that the sugar industry becomes viable. They took a political decision that they will accuse the APNU, AFC of generating problems in the sugar industry, and that they were going to open it and make it viable. The evidence now suggests that it is not viable, and what the People's Progressive Party has done is to make things worse. And they are investing a lot of taxpayers' money and little or no return for it. The APNU, AFC have always argued that we have to downsize the sugar industry. We have to put resources in to ensure that it would produce at a reasonable level vis-a-vis the cost of production. We also are taking the position and have given severance to workers with the aim of putting them in other areas. We should recall that the EU, when they were getting rid of the sugar protocol at the time, provided the government of Guyana with a lot of money to diversify and to find ways and means of helping the sugar workers. They never did. What they did was the usual incompetence of Barry Jackdale, invested in a Skeldon factory that was dead from the inception. And so the sugar workers are facing the brunt of the PPP's incompetence, especially that of Barry Jackdale, who would have established to the people of Guyana, apart from cussing and abusing, he has been a useless person in the context of the development of this country. I've said regularly, he will go down as one of the few presidents that cannot show a check that he was successful in. And the closest thing that would have come to success was the Berbice River Bridge, in which he developed a scheme that allows his friends, etc., to benefit significantly, while the people who use it are paying a high rate just to cross the Berbice River Bridge. So the sugar industry has been destroyed by the PPP. They tried to suggest that it was us who brought it to where it is, but they seem to want the Guyanese to forget that they closed many sugar estates before we actually came to power. And when we came to power, what we attempted to do correctly was to downsize it and to ensure that as we invest in it, we don't waste money, bring it to some level of viability, and then work out the way forward, while at the same time focusing on diversification. The PPP is solely responsible for the destruction of the sugar industry in Guyana.
And now we're seeing something else, kind of like a pattern. The PPP has destroyed so many things in Guyana. They seem to be going after the billions of dollars that is supposed to be for taxpayers of the country, and the usage for taxpayers. They're wasting it. They're just basically probably stealing it, putting it in their pockets, their friends and their cronies. $214 million US missing as a result of this so-called audit by Exxon. This is a criminal act. What's happening with this, and what do you guys intend to do, you guys meaning the opposition, moving forward?
Well, we need to point out that from the inception, we were saying that if you are going to deal with this contract, we benefit from profits. And if we benefit from profits, those profits come after cost recovery. Therefore, it was incumbent on the government to ensure that they put the mechanisms in place so that we can have the actual correct costs that was expended. Now, the government has failed to increase the capacity of the Guyana Revenue Authority to audit the bills from oil and gas. Having failed to do that, they were caught with their pants down, because before we left government, we initiated an audit. They kept hiding that audit from the people. Kaicho News published it. The opposition commented on it and pointed out that this audit is there and it needs to be brought to the public in the interest of transparency and accountability. It finally came. When it came, it was established that $214 million US were, how do I put it? $240 million US was included that really does not constitute a cost that they should recover. Now, clearly they attempted to hide it from the people. As it became public, they were left with no option but to deal with it. In dealing with it, they did indicate that GRA was the institution responsible for doing that. GRA did what they had to do, and it was established that there was $214 million US missing. Out of the blues, that came down to 11 million. And by some stretch of their own imagination, it came down to 3 million. Now, when that hit the public domain, I think the government was embarrassed. And so they tried to cover it up. When they recognized that they cannot cover it up, they then decide they will blame a public servant called Mr. Gosai. Now, if you know the nature of the PPP, if you know the nature of Barajak deal, who doesn't even allow the minister to do its work, you would know that no public servant in the ministry can do that without the permission of the autocrat and authoritarian semi-despot Barry Jack Dale. So for them to come now and tell us that this public servant is the person who engaged Exxon and reduce it is ridiculous. It's ridiculous for a number of reasons. One, ExxonMobil would have already provided their bills. The audit showed that it was in excess of 214 million was overcharged. Now, if you had these bills and the audit confirmed that, you now have to explain where the bills would have come from to bring it down to 11 million. And then you will have to further explain how it came down to 3 million, because you already had an audit process which would have had expenses against the bills. And so to come now and tell us some garbage about this chap engage Exxon without the authority of the minister is just that, garbage. Clearly, the government intention was to siphon off the 214 million at the private and other levels so that they could have benefited from it. It's clearly a case of corruption by people in high office. And now that they have been caught, what they are seeking to do is to blame a public servant who cannot really respond. Domination and control the government. They fear no public servant will come out and talk the truth as to what happened here. So the opportunity is taken him, Mr. Gosai. We don't believe it for 1 minute. We believe that the vice president was involved, had knowledge, since he is the omnipotent, he is the omnipresent, he is the omniscient, only he alone has knowledge. No minion, no small person will be allowed to be involved without Jack Dale knowing involved. So logically, we will never accept that Mr. Gosai was the problem here. We know he will be disciplined. We know that he will be a scapegoat, but we also know the real source of the corruption is in the leadership of the People's Progressive Party. And may I say this to you? This is probably the only country in the world when you have something as big and as important as this, the people who are accountable are public servants. In England, both Vikram Bharat and Barry Jagdeo would have had to go. In America, they might have gone to jail. And so, don't tell us nonsense. You are the person responsible. Vikram Bharat, they brought to Parliament legislation to deal with the oil and gas activities. And in virtually every legislation, it is the minister that will determine. That tells you their mindset. Their thing is to control totally and dominate. They didn't want a commission to oversee oil and gas. They wanted to do it themselves. How now suddenly is this young man who doesn't have political power, who is a public servant. And when you look at how public service operates, he would have had to do what he had to do, send the information to the minister, assuming that that was the case. I know it wasn't, but let's assume the public service procedure was followed. He would have had to do his assessment, send it to the minister, and get policy approval. But now they're trying to suggest as if they had no say and this man went off and do it on his own. Tell that to the Marines who might, if they touch down and don't know the country, they might have problems. But we know what they're up to.
Absolutely. When you do the math, 214 million US dollars, and they want the Guyanese people to believe that a low-level public servant, probably attached to the PPP, had absolute authority to sit and negotiate a settlement of $11 million and then down final settlement of $3 million. As Mr. Aubrey Norton said, tell that to the Marines. If you're now joining us, 29 minutes after 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock is the leader and leader of the People's National Congress Reform is with us this evening, Aubrey Compton Norton. Mr. Norton, concerning all of these things in public domain, lack of transparency, skullduggery on the part of PPP officials, senior operatives of the PPPC, ExxonMobil probably, obviously, should be aware of all of these things. I know you guys met with Exxon recently. Do you care to say whether these things in terms of accountability and transparency were discussed with Exxon?
Exxon sort of briefed us on where they were and we listened, but we also made a very important point that for us, oil and gas resources must serve our people. From the discussion we had with Exxon, it was obvious that the government was involved at the political level and was engaged and know what was happening. So they cannot blame Exxon because Exxon has already said that the government was engaged and they knew what was happening. So they decided they will blame the public servant. Now, we have said regularly that in coming to government, we are going to engage Exxon. Before we know it's a contract, we are also that we contract mechanisms to engage Exxon and make interest of the people of Guyana. We believe that that should be done. The government, on the other hand, is doing everything, and if you see their approach, the government recognizes that it has lost support even among its supporters. What the government is doing is seeking to provoke a confrontation. Remember, if you go through our history, whenever there is a confrontation between the opposition and the government, one of the first things they do is blame the opposition as hooligans. They try to make it racism, and they suggest, and I remember 1997 well, that Indians got beat up, etc. I think they are going down the road of provoking confrontation with the aim of being able to use that confrontation to regain support. Let me remind you, in the Quindon Bacchus case, people were protesting peacefully coming down the road, and they paid a man from Buxton to infiltrate the protests, and they then blame it on the APNU, AFC, and proceeded to pay out millions in compensation to Monrepo farmers. We have to take the PPP on. We have to confront them at the legal level, at the level of protest, but we have to be very careful to ensure that they do not be given the opportunity to transform it into a clash between African Guyanese and poor Indo-Guyanese so that they can use it for their benefit. Because it is critical to note that it is not only a race issue, it's also a class issue. The average Indo-Guyanese is not benefiting from oil and gas, though an elite group, corrupt as what, linked to the People's Progressive Party, are benefiting. And in political struggle, you have to look at all the interests, all the people that are involved, and carve your strategy to ensure you continue to build support and do not give your opponents the opportunity to use whatever is happening to rebuild. I was integral to the 97 protests. Clearly the elections were fraudulent, but what the PPP was able to do was to use the protests. We achieved some objectives in the protests, but they were able to use it to rally their base so that they created a perception and an approach which brought it into ethnic terms, Indians versus African. We have to be careful to avoid that, even though we have to protest what they're doing. We have to build consciousness, like I said at the diaspora conference, where our people understand this. I remember the Linden struggle. One of the reasons we succeeded in the Linden struggle was because very early we were able to educate people and say to them, do not allow this to become a race issue. And so even though they were Indians in Linden, we were able to deal with it without one Indo-Guyanese being touched. And in fact, in some regard, we had the support of them. We are at a critical juncture where the PPP has created crises in all areas. And their only hope now is to foment a situation that puts Indo-Guyanese and Afro-Guyanese against each other with the aim of rallying the Indo-Guyanese community towards them. We have got to be very careful, and as we protest, as we do the things we have to do, that has to be taken into consideration. I said today, I'm speaking with the lawyers to see the legal action we can take on these issues, because we need to take legal action. It is evident that just private criminal charges wouldn't work. Clearly, the DPP operates based on the instructions of the People's Progressive Party. And once you go down the road of private criminal action, she will just do as she normally do, discontinue it. Unfortunately, the law provides for it, even though the CCJ in one of their ruling made it very clear that it is outdated and it's a change. So we are in a complex political situation. We had to deal with the PPP attempts, because let us also remember, now that they recognize that they're not going to get this race battle that they want to, they have resolved the local government election. They were involved in fraud, in bribery. And what caused us to succeed? We succeeded because we were able to educate people, raise their consciousness, be in contact with them. And so when the time came to vote, they voted against the PPP. We will continue that work. I think we have to be on the ground. We are going to be back on the ground from next week across the country, and we will prepare the basis to take all the actions we need, legal as well as political action on the ground, to ensure we keep the PPP back against the wall.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Norton, as we approach 38 minutes after 9 o'clock. Good evening to all of you who just joined us. Leader of the opposition, Aubrey Norton, is with us this evening. Just prior to you getting into office, becoming the leader of the opposition, leader of the People's National Congress Reform, People expected a real confrontation, protest, mass protest. It doesn't matter what the PPP thinks or what they do. We already know what they do. Pay people to go into these protests and create problems. Those individuals would and should be identified. But the previous opposition were described as docile, weren't doing much, just issuing press releases and so forth and so on. People expected, in terms of real confrontation in front of GCOM. Claudette Singh is still there. The U.S. ambassador left on her own accord, and so forth. Are we seeing a change, Aubrey Norton, now that he's in office?
You have to check what Aubrey Norton inherited. In 1997, when I was General Secretary, we spent a lot of time preparing people for protests. When I took over the party in 2021, December, we had to do and continue to do a lot of work to be on the ground, to engage our people and to ensure our people are with us. There is little or no sense protesting and you haven't mobilized your people on your side. Now, when I become leader of the party and later the opposition, I have to do an analysis with people of what the situation is on the ground and act based on that situation. We have done that analysis. We have been doing the work. We are going to have protests. But I do not believe that Aubrey Norton came with this whole intention, like some people put it, to break up Guyana. We have to strategically protest. We have engaged in constant protest against GCOM. We have made our positions known. There are those who seem to believe that you achieve your objective by just pure confrontation. You have to be strategic. And I'm saying to you, we have prepared a lot to the village. We will to do that. We at various stages will engage in protest. We will be very careful to not create the conditions for the PPP to use it and regain some strength. Right now, they're on the back foot, they are weakened, they are corrupt. Even PPP supporters are dissatisfied with them. And we have to analyze the situation, and at every stage of the process, we have to take the relevant actions. There were those who said to me, don't go into the local government election, call widespread protests. You have to analyze it. Local government is not something that hypes up people. And therefore, even if you had called protests around local government, it was not the kind of issue that will allow you to rile up. So you had to come up with a strategy. And the strategy was, one, to ensure you consolidate your base. Two, contest in areas that the PPP is weakening, and we have seen increases in those areas, and use the opportunity to mobilize our people and prepare them for general and regional election. That process continues. And I'll say to you, protest is done based on conditions. In 1997, there was an outcry against Mrs. Jagan becoming president. And that in itself was a rallying point. Anybody who is aware and understand actions of this kind know that you have to have both the subjective conditions, which is the consciousness, and the objective conditions, which are generated by the system. I believe the system is generating those conditions through blackouts, through high cost of living, etc. It's a question now of the consciousness and giving leadership and getting people to act at the right time in the interest of the wider struggle.
All right, Mr. Aubrey Norton there responding to the question about protest. One quick thing before we take a break. ExxonMobil, back to them. They must be concerned, or they ought to be concerned, that the people of Guyana may very well turn against them if they remain quiet in the face of these serious allegations of audit being conducted under questionable circumstances, $240 million missing, not much being done with the oil money, the oil resources, and so forth. During the course of your meeting, did they express any sort of concern with regards to public's perception of them? They've given hundreds of millions of dollars of concessions, while ordinary Guyanese are basically kicking bricks, so to speak.
No, they haven't. We didn't discuss that. We put out that it is in our interest to ensure the people benefit. Now, let me say this to you. Exxon is a private company going after profits. It is incumbent on the government to take action in the interest of the people. Unfortunately, the government, because it is corrupt and incompetent, is compromised, and things that shouldn't happen are happening. We're saying to you as in the government, we are aware of the agreement. We are going to take the actions to ensure that our people benefit. I do not anticipate that ExxonMobil will come and operate outside of the basic social corporate responsibilities. I don't expect, if you are running a company and you get in rate with $240 million, would you feel obligated to go and say, okay, it's wrong, look back? No. You're dealing with corporate entities that have got to show their owners and shareholders profit.
No, but what I meant, not to cut you, what I meant, did you guys take that message to Exxon that the public is increasingly concerned about their actions?
Well, we didn't say anything about the public being increasingly concerned. What we said was that, one, the people of Guyana need to benefit more. Two, we are going to do what it takes to ensure the people of Guyana benefited. In the meeting before, we raised the concern of the treatment of Guyanese, and that we felt that there needs to be change in the treatment. They had undertaken, in fact, they'd actually said in that engagement that it had more to do with the people that run these activities, that have contracts with them rather than them, and that they were going to undertake to deal with it. In some regards, some of that was done, but not to our satisfaction. We, however, believe that the responsibility is that of the government to hold ExxonMobil accountable, while at the same time ensuring there aren't violations of the law. And
the opposition's job is to hold the installed PPP regime accountable.
Which we have been doing in the sense of exposing them. If you follow the debates on the oil and gas bill that came, we outlined clear positions. We pointed out that there were really no mechanisms in place to ensure that the oil sector is properly managed, and that everything was focused on the minister, who is clearly incompetent. And so we did outline our positions and will continue to keep the government under pressure. Mind you, you're dealing with a corrupt government whose focus is not the people of Guyana. It is what they can make for themselves.
Absolutely. Were you surprised when Barra Jagdeo actually went after a sitting judge in the decision to have ExxonMobil increase its insurance in the event of a spill? What is your take on that?
I expected them to go after the judge. It is the nature of them. Their interest is not the people of Guyana. They see them pursuing an approach which allows a lax situation in which they can benefit. And so I never anticipated that they would want to take a position that will tighten the screws on Exxon. And here we all are thankful that Exxon is in Guyana and that they is a contract, but we also have got to do everything to ensure we improve our income and intake. I can tell you, I am dissatisfied with the judge pronouncement. You know, one of the greatest misunderstandings I have ever heard that was used to rationalize a judge decision is the judge talking about the polluter pay principle. Now, the polluter pay principle is a principle that originated in the negotiations on the environment. And what this principle had said is this, that the developed world were the main polluters of the atmosphere. And as polluters, they should pay to rectify it. If you go to all the documentation in the UNCED, in the conventions, etc., you will see that is the intention of the polluter pay principle, that the people who pollute the atmosphere should not put the burden on developing countries. It should be honored and done by those who pollute. This judge mix up the polluter pay principle with pay to pollute. Pay to pollute is where you put a fine or a cost for when you pollute. And so the government put in place that if they pollute to this amount, they will pay 50,000. I don't even remember the figure. It is absolute garbage. We need to recognize that we need minimum pollution. We need to recognize that it is not in the best interest of us or the world to have a company pay and pollute. What we need to be doing is reducing the pollution, ensuring the company honors its obligation to the environment. And here you're not anti-Exxon, you are pro-environment at a time when climate change is affecting us. How could you, as a government, allow people to pay a small piece to pollute when you know that the globe is warming, when you yourself are saying now that agriculture production is down because of global warming, when you yourself know, apart from the environment and the purchase of coconut water overseas, coconut water is limited. The government is a corrupt government, and it is unfortunate that a judge could manifest that level of ignorance.
And just for clarity, we're not speaking of Justice Kisoon, the original judge who said
no, we're talking about this recent ruling on
Gotcha.
I start by saying we agree with Kisoon,
Yes.
and that's a different issue. That was the question of insurance and parent company guarantee. We agree with that. Where we disagree is a judge. I don't remember who is the judge, if it's the Chief Justice or who, but whoever is the judge,
Probably Rishi Prasad, Justice.
I don't remember it's who, honestly. But that judge needs to go read the polluter pay principle, understand the difference between the polluter pays and pay to pollute. We cannot afford to uphold pay to pollute. We could uphold the polluter pay principle. Those who have polluted should pay for mitigation and new measures to ensure we reduce climate change. But no way can we make it a law and create the conditions for any company to come and pollute because they can pay. If it is cheaper to pollute and pay the pittance, they will pollute and pay. We need proper measures for environmental conservation. You know, people mine bauxite throughout Guyana over the years. And we never had a part of the law that says, having finished mining bauxite, you need to do land reclamation. So what we have in Linden and Kwakwani is a set of mined out areas, and the resources now to bring those back to where we wanted to be able to use it will have to come from us. We have to be forward looking in our approach to the environment. We have to have a situation where in cases of mining, you want reclamation of lands. We have our small miners who might not have the resources. The government can have a plan to do with that. But we cannot continue to allow people to mine from our lands. We want to benefit from it. But at the end of the day, they left it like that and gone. We have to put mechanisms in place to ensure we can reclaim those lands, put them into other forms of production so that our people will benefit. The problem of this government is that they do not see the people. They see themselves. They see their friends. They see their favorites. And that is why we are in trouble.
Profits and corruption upon corruption upon corruption. Shame on this PPP regime. We have the Sue Gates, and now they have the $214 million US, all manner of things. Mr. Aubrey Norton, we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. And notice you're looking at your watch.
Well, you have 5 minutes, so I have to.
I'm chipping into your Friday night time. 1 second.
Yeah, my name is Jasmine Caldata from Vietnam. And since 1965, I become a voter. And I always place my X next to the cup. And what they are doing today, I can't take it. So I have no more vote to give to PPP anymore. I'm not going to vote anymore no more. If they have to lose by 1 vote, they're losing it by data.
If they have to lose by 1 vote, they will lose by data. Thousands of other folks out there just like that. Elections are around the corner, so to speak. I know in 2015 there was this coalition and so forth and so on. I'm not saying that you should speak out in terms of the secret or whatever you guys have mechanism to approach the elections, but there are 2 things. The party has their Congress that is due, your party. That is one. What's the approach with regards to the Congress, holding up the Congress? And secondly, do you see yourself as the presidential candidate, assuming that you will be reelected as leader of the party, up to the party members to decide that? But do you see yourself as the presidential candidate, or is there some other sort of arrangements in place?
The party Congress will be held, and I have no doubt I will be reelected. I think party persons still see me as one of the persons who the PPP cannot challenge in terms of integrity, etc. They have nothing on me on corruption. They have tried all kind of fabrication, including Bam Ali, etc. None of them got on, and people still see me as the person who will stand up to the PPP and not compromise, and therefore can take the PPP on. Now, we go to the Congress. I believe I'll be reelected, and that in itself will be a mandate for me to be the presidential candidate.
Yeah. Well, all right. Enough of that.
May I also say that while I know I will be reelected, and that will give me a mandate to be the presidential candidate, if for some stretch of imagination I see the need for another presidential candidate, I can say to you, I will do what is in the best interest of ensuring we get rid of the PPP. But as I see it as present, our party supporters and a lot of the Guyanese people believe that the only person who can stand up to the PPP, one of the few persons that the PPP can pull some corruption thing out of the closet and run down the road with it, is Aubrey Norton. Now, they have tried in all areas to smear me, but I'm not worried about that. The Guyanese people know me. I'm on the road with the Guyanese people, and they come daily to me to say these are the things that we need to do. We are developing a people-centered development strategy, which we believe will benefit the people of Guyana, and we believe that we can be able to sell it to them and be successful.
All right, without chipping into your time, Wayne Caesar, Plaisance guy is on. You are currently in Plaisance as well. I don't know, you left us in Poker Street, Linden there. I bet you didn't know that I'm a Poker Street kind of guy too, Mr.
Mark, you can't do that. I know your mother. I know where you're from.
All right.
You must recall when I was part of the campaign, when the PPP was going after you, I was in contact with your mother and doing a number of things. And so to tell me I don't know that, I find that you're getting old. You have short memory.
Probably getting old indeed. Wayne Caesar, you have a quick question for Mr. Norton, opposition leader. Go ahead, Mr. Caesar.
Yeah. Yes, Mark, a pleasant good evening to you and a pleasant good evening to the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Aubrey C. Norton. And of course, a pleasant good evening to our listeners and viewers. Mr. Norton, I was listening to you earlier and you did say that the PPPC would have lost some support amongst their supporters. My question to you is, what is your party, the PNC, or let's look at it from a more holistic approach, the coalition as a whole, doing on the ground to try to engage these individuals who are, for the most part, on the fence and maybe thinking more, voting along the lines of the APNU plus?
We have been engaging in target groups with persons who are indicating clearly that they will not support the People's Progressive Party. We have been engaging them, and you would see from our comments on sugar, our comments on education, that we are now garnering information from them and being able to expose the People's Progressive Party. We are going to intensify, beginning in the new week, engagements in the wider society as well as in PPP strongholds. There are a number. You have to recognize you're dealing with a community that is in fear. There are some that are coming out now, but a lot of them will tell you that it is not easy to be in a PPP stronghold and expose the PPP. They come after you in the worst fashion. But we are engaging. There are a number of Indo-Guyanese persons at different levels that are engaging us, some directly with me, some through others. Recently, I was in Windsor Forest, where I spoke with some of them, and we have seen the mood on the ground as one in which they are rejecting the PPP. And like I said when I was talking about protests, etc., we have to be very, very careful to not allow the PPP to push us in a particular direction so that they transform it into a black against Indo-Guyanese and regain that support. I'm very, very careful to deal with that so that we will protest them, we will expose them, but we recognize that this struggle is not solely an ethnic struggle. The PPP is very racial, and they are up against the African Guyanese community, taking away lands, etc. But a large section of the Indo-Guyanese community is dissatisfied with the PPP, and we must promote ourselves as a party that will serve all the people and do what is necessary to ensure those people who are fed up with the PPP, while they might not become members of the PNC or the APNU or the AFC, they are satisfied that we will do a better job and that the PPP is not the best thing at this stage. The evidence is clear. They have an opportunity to compare 2015 to 2020 with 2020 to now. And those comparisons are showing that the APNU AFC did a better job. In wages and salaries, we increased it more than ever under the PPP. Electricity, we no longer have to tell them that we were getting rid of blackouts and we were on a course to solve the problem, but now there are blackouts. We no longer have to tell them that in the 5 years without loans, without oil money, that we improve water to the point where people were getting water across the country 24/7. And that in that process, our people were benefited. And now the government isn't spending that kind of money, though they are allocating it. They're not spending it and improving the quality of water. We no longer have to tell them that. We no longer have to tell them that during the period we began to see improvement in math and English at the level of CXC, and there were improvements in the education system, and we're going back to where we would have come from. We don't have to tell them anymore that without oil money, we build roads in all communities to the point where even our communities sometimes accuse us of not giving them enough. And that without oil revenue, those roads were built, etc. So there are many things that have emerged that put us in a better position. They can say whatever they like about David Granger and try to blame. They know full well now that he as president was not corrupt and that they benefited under a leader that wasn't corrupt, to the point where Jack Deo laughs and goes on to suggest that nothing was done for African Guinea just because David Granger decided he wanted to be fair and to spread the resources across the country. So I'm saying to you, we have a strong track record. When we came to power in 2015, the security sector was in trouble. Executions, bribery, lawlessness on the road. Between 2015 and 2020, we saw significant improvement in law enforcement, including solving crimes that were solvable under the PPP, but because of their links to crime, they couldn't solve them. We saw those crimes being solved under the APNU AFC. We saw a development of a program to do better police stations. Among other things, we saw the improvement in the health sector, and they had more nurses, more doctors, and we even trained nursing assistants to help the process. So what I'm saying in gist is people now have an opportunity to compare the APNU AFC 5 years with the PPP. And we believe they are doing that. And we're seeing regularly people in the Indo-Guyanese community coming out and taking the position. In the indigenous community, we did a lot. When we came to power, they had problems with water. We put many wells in the interior to deal with that. We actually began to do paved roads in the interior. Let us not forget, they laugh when we were putting concrete roads in Madia. Now they're running putting concrete roads and they stay quiet. They will always be led by us. They lack the intellectual competence to run a country. And so we believe that the tide has turned against the PPP. When we came to government, they had carried on about elections and had the ABCE countries up against us. We have carved a foreign policy approach at the level of the opposition with the assistance of our people in the diaspora, and we have consistently made inroads and in our international community, so that now I now believe the international international community can put you in. You have to do the work. But I'm saying at the international level, conditions conducive to us returning to government are there.
All right, Mr. Norton, I know you could have gone on and on. You're looking at the time, but we can take one question or so from members of the audience. Bear with us another couple minutes, please. You've been absent from here for a while, but Roxanne Best is saying you can get all support, however, unless GCOM is fixed, meaning a clean voters list and biometrics, you are doomed. The people are doomed. The corruption is blatant. Respond to that question, please, Mr. Norton.
Armies don't go to war with the troops they think they should have and the strategies they think they should have. They go to war with what they have and seek to improve and change. We are already at war over clean voters list and biometrics. And we are gaining the impression that the international community is also supportive of this approach. We will continue the struggle for a clean voters list and biometrics. But even if we have a clean voters list, we have to put in place, train people to be able to monitor the system, whether there's a clean voters list or not. Ideally, we will beat the People's Progressive Party hands down with a clean voters list. We believe that they are not delivering the census information because it has shown a further decline in the PPP support base. Now, there's a danger with biometrics, which we have to address now. Biometrics is good with a clean voters list, but if the PPP do what it is doing, that is giving people birth certificates and registering them, then you could have a lot of illegal content, etc. And biometrics will only confirm. So we have to have a struggle at this stage to ensure that those people do not get on the list and become biometric compliant. So that element, so we have got to look at all of these options and deal with it. And we're satisfied that we will. One of the takeaways from the local government elections is that we have shown that we could beat the PPP even against the odds. We just need to do our work, fight vigorously for a clean voters list and biometric, and do the things I mentioned. And I think we are on the way to removing the People's Progressive Party from government.
Finally, your final question, please, Mr. Caesar. Great question. The first one you asked, you have this.
You're the only man I know with 3 finals, man, but go ahead.
I'm part of the West Indies cricket team. Mr. Caesar, go ahead, sir.
But then you want to be in the finals at all. Go ahead, Owen.
All right. This one is going to be pretty simple. You know, since Mr. Norton would have been a lecturer of at the University of Guyana, to the extent that the APNU wins the 2025 elections, are you going to make tuition free at the university level, you know, within the first year of your presidency, if it is you who is the president?
I think within the first 6 months. Look, we have shown as a PNC that we give free education from nursery to university without oil money. If we could have done it without oil money, what precludes us from doing it with oil money? And so to me, it's a no-brainer. There will be free education at the university level. However, we will need to restructure the university to ensure that it is delivering the graduates we need for development. Our constitution makes it clear that there should be free health facilities. This government is taking all our resources to prop up private, well, I shouldn't say private health institutions, because there are those that aren't benefiting and serve us for years. But the newfound ones that are close to the PPP regime, they're doing all kinds of things to ensure that they get business. We will ensure that our people get quality health care. We will ensure that our hospitals, our health centers have the drugs they need. And we have to cut out this corrupt practice where the drugs go to the institution, but they find themselves in PPP, people, private pharmacy, etc., and the people are deprived of health care. So you are guaranteed. As a person, I come from Linden, no wealthy family. Had there not been free education at the university level, I am not sure what I would have been. And so for me, it is personal and a social responsibility for us to ensure all our people who have the potential and the credentials to get into university have the opportunity to do that. In the last 5 years, and between 2015 and 2020, we returned scholarships to people doing law. And many people who are brighter than some of the people who got money were able to do law and doing well. The government has gone back to a position where they are not facilitating law scholarships because they want the wealthy to dominate law and the poor will not have access to lawyers. We will take a different approach and ensure that even in law, there are scholarships so that the poor people who cannot afford become lawyers and be in a position to even represent those who cannot afford representation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aubrey Norton, taking time out of your busy schedule. I have no further question for you this evening. We hope to see you back pretty soon. But of course, we wouldn't allow you to go without your closing remarks. Lots of things, cost of living really high. Lots of Venezuelans coming into the country. People seem to be concerned the manner in which they're coming. Thousands upon thousands. Your closing remarks, please, sir.
The government is at sea on the Venezuela issue. When you're a government that believes in transaction, sometimes it's hard to understand foreign policy that doesn't involve a transaction. And so on the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy, we'll have to put pressure on them to stay in line. I mean, it is, to me, it's a simple proposition that if people are claiming Essequibo, you can't bring them and put them in Essequibo. You have to find mechanisms to get them out of Essequibo. Something like that the government doesn't understand. But I'll close by saying this to you. I believe the people of Guyana are ready for change, and we will have a change. I believe the government has placed on a platter the opportunity for us to return to government. The only people that could stop us from returning to government is we ourselves. And once we do what we have to do and do the work on the ground, whenever the elections are called, the AP and UAFC will be back in government.
Thanks as always, Aubrey Compton Norton. We take a toast for the covering because people might be peeping what I have in my container here this evening. Thank you so much, Mr. Aubrey Norton. God bless you. See you back very soon. Yeah.
Feel free anytime, Mark.
Thank you, sir. All right, Leader of the Opposition, Aubrey Compton Norton. Quickly, I'm not sure, is your camera sticking there, Mr. Wayne Caesar? What is your take on what Mr. Norton had to say this evening in terms of his answers?
Mark, I thought that Mr. Norton was excellent tonight. He answered all the questions, very, very, very well. He gave a lot of detail. He is a leader with a vision, based on his answers. I know that he has a vision in place for Guyana, and Mark, look, you can believe him because he's a leader that comes to you with no baggage, really. There's nothing behind Aubrey Norton. He's not a big rich guy. There's never been nothing out that he's in corruption and these kind of things. So he's authentic and, represents a career politician, I would say, because with the exception of him doing some lecturing at UG, there's nothing else really there and doing party work. So, he's a career politician. And listen, he fits the mold and he did an excellent job. Look, what I would do, Mark, I would encourage him to come on more because the people needs to hear him more. We're closing in on elections. You can be absent, you know, from speaking to the people. Whenever you get that opportunity, you have to come and you have to execute. I thought he did an excellent job tonight. That's my opinion on that.
All right. Wayne Caesar is going to be on his show tomorrow. Sorry about that, Wayne. I'm not sure. I missed that point. My apologies. But Wayne Caesar is going to be on tomorrow with his show. It's called Over to You. Hopefully sometime you'll have Mr. Norton and others on your program, Over to You. I just want people to know that you're in full control of your show. What do you have planned tomorrow for your show, sir?
Well, I'm still putting together my presentation for tomorrow, but it's in good shape, and I don't want to take,
5 o'clock tomorrow.
Yes, 5 p.m. tomorrow, and I encourage everyone to join.
Thank you. You guys don't forget, right here on 107.1 FM, Wayne Caesar, he has his own show. It's called Over to You. And to all of our listeners, I know that you had a lot of questions also. I noticed Star Major had his question. Lots of you have your questions. My apology. We couldn't fit everything in, but we will invite the leader of the opposition to be back some other time with us this evening. Mr. Clive Fraser, Francine Cruz, Brenda, Casey, Ras Ricardo, Ian, Dylan, Crew, all the folks who took time out, Robin Simon, Colin Barnwell, Desiree Simons, everybody, good evening to all of you. Have a great weekend, guys. Be safe. And don't forget, Wayne Caesar is on tomorrow, right after Law and You with Shalon Washington. That comes on at 4 o'clock, followed by Wayne Caesar at 5 o'clock. Wayne, thank you so much, my friend. God bless you, and God bless our listeners as well.
Thank you so much, Mark. Have a good night, everyone.
Appreciate it. Bye, everyone.
Basement level vibes with another one, straight up blackness. Who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, I do it for the love, him not do it for no money. Straight up, him attack, educating everybody. Big up my friends and big up my family. Turn on the radio, catch the vibes, it's integrity. Straight up, Benskop.
So this is attorney Shalon Washington, owner and founder of Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.